So the Iliad is a poem written by this guy, Homer. He was an 8th century Greek poet credited for writing 2 epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad takes place around 10 years into the siege of Troy, an ancient city located on the edge of modern-day Turkey. The city was under siege by Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, which was a major settlement in ancient Greece. The story begins with the leaders of the Greek forces, also known as the Achaeans, deciding whether or not to return a Trojan captive named Chrysis to her father, Chryses. He was a priest of Apollo, and he offered them wealth for the return of his daughter. Agamemnon, however, decided to refuse the offer. Chryses' narrative options pleads to Apollo to help him. Apollo responds by sending a plague to afflict the Greek army camp. Introducing the star of the show, Achilles. He's the son of the sea nymph Thetis, who attempted to make him immortal by dipping him into the river Styx as a baby. However, he was left vulnerable at the part by which he was held, his heel, hence Achilles' heel. Achilles is known at this point as the best of the Greeks and leader of the Myrmidon forces. After 9 days of plague in the Greek camp, Achilles demands that Agamemnon returns Chryses to her father so that the plague can be lifted. Eventually, Agamemnon agrees, but he demands that Achilles must also return Brises, Achilles' slaves that he captured from the Trojans. This was to intentionally dishonor Achilles. As in ancient Greece, losing your war trophies will bring you great shame. Achilles becomes furious. Withdrawing himself and his Myrmidon warriors, he prays to his mother Thetis, asking her to make sure that the Greeks begin losing the war. He hopes that this will make Agamemnon realize he needs Achilles' power in battle to win the war, and therefore restore his honor. After Achilles leaves, Agamemnon decides to test the loyalty of the remaining Greek army. He does this by sending a fake order to abandon the war. This doesn't go too well, as having been at war for 9 years by now, the soldiers are more than happy to go home. Agamemnon's plan would have failed spectacularly if not for Odysseus, who, inspired by Athena, rallied the Greeks. A small band of Greeks decide to sneak into the Trojan camp and spread chaos. However, as the Greeks find themselves lacking the numbers of the Myrmidon warriors, the battle turns in the favor of the Trojans. They retaliate by killing many Greeks and even lighting their boats on fire. Patroclus, friend and lover of Achilles, is distraught at the sight of the Greeks losing the war. He convinces Achilles to allow him to disguise himself, wearing Achilles' armor, and lead the Myrmidon warriors against the Trojans. He's pretty successful. He attacks twice, dealing a large blow, but on the 3rd attack, he dies. The body of Patroclus is then brought to Achilles, who, upon seeing the death of his lover, becomes enraged. He goes nuts and marches on Troy, demanding to fight the man who killed Patroclus, the prince of Troy, Hector. Unsurprisingly, Achilles wins, and in his anger, he drags Hector's body around with his chariot for days on end. After a few days of seeing his son's body dragged around, King Priam of Troy finally approaches and offers Achilles payment in exchange for Hector's body. After chatting for a bit, Achilles is moved to tears as they both lament their losses in the war. Achilles agrees to return Hector's body and leaves to mourn Patroclus. A 12-day truce is signed between the Greeks and the Trojans, and Hector's body is buried in Troy. The whole city mourns, and there, the Iliad ends.